Husband took Mistress to sign divorce from pregnant wife, but the lawyer's words made him collapse. The November rain painted streaks across the floor-to-ceiling windows of Morrison & Associates, one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms on Fifth Avenue. Sophia Miller sat alone in the leather chair, her hands folded protectively over her 8-month pregnant belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent, as if sensing her mother's anxiety. She wore a simple navy maternity dress, her dark hair pulled back in a loose bun. At 30 years old, she looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her wedding ring, a modest band she'd worn for 7 years, felt heavy on her finger. In a few minutes, she would sign papers that would end her marriage to Christopher Miller. The door opened. Christopher walked in first, his tailored charcoal suit impeccable, his salt and pepper hair styled perfectly. At 36, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who'd built a successful tech consulting firm from the ground up, or so he told everyone. But it wasn't Christopher who made Sophia's breath catch in her throat. It was the woman beside him. Lydia Barnes entered the office as if she owned it, her hand intertwined with Christopher's. 25 years old, blonde, wearing a crimson dress that hugged her figure. She smiled with the kind of triumph that made Sophia's stomach turn. Lydia's eyes swept the room before landing on Sophia's pregnant form, and her smile widened. "Oh," Lydia said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You're still here." Sophia said nothing. She focused on breathing. Slow, steady breaths the way her obstetrician had taught her. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Christopher barely glanced at her. "Let's get this over with. I have a meeting at 3. Richard Evans, Sophia's attorney, sat across from her. At 62, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he radiated a calm authority that had earned him respect in New York's legal circles for over 3 decades. He observed the scene in silence, his expression unreadable. Christopher's lawyer, a younger man named Todd Brennan, shuffled papers nervously. "Right, well, we're here to finalize the divorce proceedings between Christopher and Sophia Miller. All terms have been agreed upon, and we just need signatures on—" "Can we speed this up?" Lydia interrupted, examining her manicured nails. "We have dinner reservations at Per Se tonight." Sophia's fingers tightened around the armrest. 7 years. 7 years of marriage reduced to an inconvenience before a dinner reservation. She remembered their wedding day in the small chapel in Brooklyn, how Christopher had promised to love her through everything. She remembered working double shifts as a nurse while he built his company, Miller Tech Solutions, from their cramped apartment in Queens. She remembered signing loans as a co-guarantor when banks wouldn't trust him alone. She remembered the late nights, the sacrifices, the dreams they'd shared. And she remembered the day, 3 months ago, when she'd come home early from a prenatal appointment and found Christopher and Lydia in their bed. "Sophia?" Richard's gentle voice pulled her back to the present. "Are you ready to proceed?" She nodded slowly. Christopher reached for the pen, eager to sign. Lydia leaned against his shoulder, whispering something that made him chuckle. The sound was like glass breaking, sharp and painful. "Actually," Richard said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade, "before we proceed, there's something that needs clarification." Christopher looked up, annoyed. "What now?" "The terms were already agreed upon." Richard removed his glasses, cleaning them with deliberate slowness. "Yes, the terms were agreed upon. However, I want to ensure my client understands exactly what she's entitled to under New York State matrimonial law." "We've been through this," Todd Brennan said quickly. "The agreement is fair." "Fair?" Richard's eyebrow raised slightly. "Let's review, shall we?" Christopher Miller retains Miller Tech Solutions in its entirety. Sophia receives the house in Queens, which still has a mortgage, and monthly support payments of $3,000. Does that sound fair to you, Todd? Lydia laughed softly. Sounds more than fair for someone who just stayed home. Sophia felt her face burn, but Richard's expression remained calm. He opened a leather folder and pulled out a document. "Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice measured, "did you or did you not work as a registered nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital from 2016 to 2019, often taking double shifts?" "I did," Sophia said quietly. "And during that time, did you or did you not contribute your entire salary, approximately $75,000 annually, to household expenses and your husband's business startup costs?" "I did." Christopher shifted in his chair. "What's your point, Evans?" Richard continued, his gaze never leaving Sophia. "Did you also sign as a personal guarantor on the initial business loan of $200,000 that launched Miller Tech Solutions in 2018? Sophia nodded. Yes. And when Miller Tech secured its first major contract with Northbridge Financial in 2019, were you listed as a co-signatory on that agreement? I was. The room had gone very quiet. Even Lydia's smile had faltered slightly. Richard turned to Christopher, his voice still calm but carrying an edge that made everyone sit straighter. Mr. Miller, under New York domestic relations law, all marital property, including businesses established during the marriage, is subject to equitable distribution. Your company exists because of joint efforts, joint assets, and joint risk. Christopher's jaw tightened. I built that company. Every line of code, every client meeting, every pitch, that was me. Built with whose money? Richard asked. Whose credit? Whose signature on the loans when banks wouldn't trust you alone? Lydia's hand slipped from Christopher's shoulder. Richard placed another document on the table. This is a complete financial audit of Miller Tech Solutions. Current valuation, $18 million. Assets include the company headquarters in Midtown, intellectual property, active contracts, and investment portfolios. Under equitable distribution, Mrs. Miller is entitled to— This is ridiculous. Christopher stood abruptly. Sophia doesn't know the first thing about running a business. She doesn't need to, Richard said quietly. She needs to know what she's worth. And right now, Mr. Miller, you're asking her to sign away millions of dollars for a house with a mortgage and $3,000 a month. Sophia's heart was pounding. She hadn't known. She'd trusted Christopher when he said the settlement was the best they could do. She'd been so tired, so emotionally drained from the betrayal and the pregnancy, that she'd simply nodded along. Christopher's face had gone pale. Lydia stood frozen, her earlier confidence evaporating. So before anyone signs anything, Richard said, closing the folder, I suggest we reconvene in 2 weeks. That should give everyone time to reconsider what fair actually means. He stood, helping Sophia to her feet. She felt dizzy, overwhelmed, but also something else, something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. As they walked toward the door, Lydia's voice, small and uncertain now, followed them. Chris, what is he talking about? You said everything was yours. Christopher didn't answer. In the elevator, Sophia finally let herself breathe. Richard, I didn't know. I didn't know about any of that. The older man smiled gently. I know. That's why I'm here. Your sister hired me for a reason, Sophia. She knew you needed someone who would fight for you when you were too tired to fight for yourself. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Through the glass front, Sophia could see the rain had stopped. Weak afternoon sunlight broke through the clouds. What happens now? She asked. Now? Richard adjusted his briefcase. Now we go back to my office and discuss what you're actually entitled to. And then we make sure Christopher Miller understands that betraying you doesn't mean he gets to rob you too. For the first time in months, Sophia Miller smiled. Richard Evans's office was nothing like the cold, corporate space where Sophia had just endured her humiliation. Located in a brownstone in the Upper West Side, it felt warm, lived in. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with legal volumes and framed photographs of Richard with various clients over the decades. A small electric kettle sat on a side table, and he poured Sophia a cup of chamomile tea without asking. Drink, he said gently, setting the cup before her. It's good for the nerves. Sophia wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, letting the heat ground her. Through the window, she could see parents picking up their children from a nearby elementary school. Normal life, continuing as if hers hadn't just been turned upside down. I don't understand, she said finally. Christopher's lawyer said the settlement was standard, that $3,000 a month was generous. Richard settled into his chair with a sigh that spoke of too many similar cases. Todd Brennan is a decent enough lawyer, but he works for Christopher, not for truth. And your husband, he paused, correcting himself. Your soon-to-be ex-husband has been very strategic about how he's presented things. He opened a thick file folder, spreading documents across the desk. Your sister Elena came to me 3 weeks ago. She was worried about you. Said you weren't eating, weren't sleeping, just signing whatever Christopher put in front of you. Sophia felt a pang of guilt. Elena had been calling constantly, but Sophia had been too ashamed to answer, too exhausted to explain how completely she'd been betrayed. Elena gave me access to your old emails, bank statements, anything she could find, Richard continued. What I discovered was a pattern of financial manipulation that began long before Christopher brought his mistress to a divorce proceeding. He slid a document toward her. In 2018, you were making $75,000 annually as a registered nurse. Christopher's startup had no revenue. You paid rent, Groceries, utilities, everything. You also deposited $50,000 of your savings into the business account. Sophia remembered. Christopher had been so excited about Miller Tech, so convinced it would change their lives. She'd believed in him. Then in 2019, Richard continued, pulling out another document. When Christopher needed a loan to hire his first employees, the bank required a co-signer. You signed $200,000. Your credit, your liability. He paid it back, Sophia said weakly. He did, with profits from contracts you helped secure. Richard showed her an email chain from 2019. Here, you introduced Christopher to Dr. Marcus Brennan at Mount Sinai. No relation to Todd, who then connected him with Northbridge Financial. That contract was worth $3 million over 2 years. Sophia had forgotten about that. It had seemed like such a small thing at the time, just mentioning Christopher's services to a colleague whose brother worked in finance. In 2020, you reduced your nursing hours to part-time because Christopher said he needed help with administrative work. You weren't paid a salary, but you managed client communications, handled scheduling, and even helped with proposals. Richard's voice softened. Sophia, you built that company as much as he did. The law recognizes that. She felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. So what does that mean? What am I actually entitled to? Richard leaned forward. In New York, we have equitable distribution laws. That doesn't always mean 50-50, but it means fair. Given your contributions, financial, professional, and otherwise, I believe you're entitled to at least 40% of Miller Tech's current value. Sophia's breath caught. 40% of $18 million? $7.2 million, Richard said, plus child support, which will be substantially more than $3,000 a month given Christopher's income, plus the house, which you should own outright, not with a mortgage, plus your legal fees covered by him. The numbers were staggering. Sophia had gone to that office prepared to walk away with almost nothing, believing that's all she deserved after being discarded. But there's something else you need to know, Richard said, his expression growing serious. Christopher has been hiding assets. He pulled out a bank statement. 3 weeks ago, he transferred $500,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. 2 days after that, he put a down payment on a penthouse in Tribeca, under an LLC that's registered to Lydia Barnes. Sophia felt sick. While she'd been crying herself to sleep in their Queens home, 8 months pregnant with his child, Christopher had been planning his new life with Lydia, using money that was partly hers. Can he do that? She asked. No. It's illegal to hide or transfer marital assets during divorce proceedings. When we go back to mediation, I'm going to make sure the judge knows about every dollar he's tried to hide. Richard's eyes held a steel she hadn't seen before. Sophia, your husband didn't just betray you emotionally. He tried to rob you financially. That changes everything. Sophia stood, walking to the window. Outside, the November sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. A young couple walked by, the woman visibly pregnant, her partner's hand on her back. Sophia wondered if they were happy, if their love was real, or if it would shatter like hers had. What do I do now? She asked quietly. Now, you rest, Richard said. You're about to have a baby. That's your priority. Let me handle Christopher. We'll file an emergency motion to freeze all accounts so he can't move any more money. We'll demand a full forensic accounting of Miller Tech, and we'll make it very clear that if he wants this divorce to go quietly, he needs to negotiate in good faith. And if he doesn't? Richard's smile was thin. Then we go to court and a judge will decide. But I don't think Christopher wants that. Men like him depend on their reputations. When his clients find out he's been hiding assets and betraying the woman who helped build his company, it won't look good for business. Sophia turned back to face him. He's going to be angry. Let him be angry. You've been hurt and humiliated. It's time he faced consequences. As she left Richard's office an hour later, armed with copies of documents and a plan of action, Sophia felt something shift inside her. The grief was still there, raw and painful, but underneath it, something harder was forming. Her phone buzzed. A text from Christopher. We need to talk. That stunt your lawyer pulled was unnecessary. I'm trying to be fair. Sophia stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, all communication goes through Richard now. Don't contact me directly. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Another text came immediately. You're making a mistake. You have no idea what you're doing. Sophia blocked his number. The subway ride back to Queens felt different. She sat with her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move, and for the first time in months, She didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she was fighting back. When she got home, the house was dark and empty. Christopher had moved out 2 weeks ago, taking most of the furniture, but Sophia didn't care about the empty living room or the missing television. She went to the nursery, the one room she'd refused to let him touch. The crib was assembled, waiting. Tiny clothes hung in the closet. A mobile with stars and moons dangled above the changing table. Sophia sat in the rocking chair, the one her mother had given her, and let herself cry. Not for Christopher, not for their marriage, but for everything she'd lost and everything she was about to gain. Her daughter, the ultrasound had confirmed it was a girl, would be born into a broken home, but she would be born to a mother who knew her worth, who wouldn't let anyone diminish her, who would fight for what was right. Sophia's phone rang. "Elena." "Hey," Sophia answered, her voice thick with tears. "Richard called me," Elena said. "Told me everything." "Soph, are you okay?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted, "but I think I will be." "You will be, I promise. You're stronger than Christopher ever gave you credit for." After they hung up, Sophia sat in the darkening nursery, rocking slowly. Outside, the city hummed with life. Somewhere, Christopher was probably with Lydia, angry about the day's revelations, scrambling to protect what he thought was his. But here, in this quiet room, Sophia Miller made herself a promise. She would never again let anyone make her feel small. Not Christopher, not Lydia, not anyone. Her daughter deserved a mother who stood tall, and starting now, that's exactly who Sophia would be. Christopher Miller stared at the legal document that had been delivered to his office at 9 o'clock Monday morning. Emergency motion to freeze marital assets. The words seemed to blur on the page as his assistant, Jeremy, hovered nervously in the doorway. "Sir, your 10 o'clock is here. The investors from Cascade Capital." Christopher waved him away. "Tell them I need 15 minutes. The door closed, leaving him alone in his corner office on the 23rd floor of a midtown building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that usually made him feel powerful. Today, it just made him feel exposed. His phone buzzed. "Lydia, did you see it? They froze the accounts." "Chris, I can't access anything." Christopher's jaw tightened. He'd put Lydia's name on one of his secondary accounts last month, a gesture that had felt romantic at the time. Now it was a liability. If Richard Evans was digging into his finances, that account would raise questions. He tried calling Sophia. Blocked. He tried texting. The message showed as undelivered. "Damn it," he muttered, throwing his phone onto the desk. The meeting with Cascade Capital went poorly. The investors had questions about MillerTech's financial stability. Questions Christopher couldn't answer clearly because half his attention was on the legal bomb Richard Evans had just dropped. By the time they left, promising to circle back after reviewing some things, Christopher knew the deal was slipping away. Todd Brennan called at noon. "Chris, we need to talk about this motion. Evans isn't playing around. He's got documentation of the Cayman transfer and the Tribeca property. A judge is going to look at this very unfavorably. I was just moving money around for tax purposes," Christopher said, the lie tasting bitter even as he spoke it. "Then you should have disclosed it during mediation. Look, I can fight this, but it's going to get ugly. Evans is pushing for a forensic audit of the entire company. That means every transaction, every account, everything since 2018. Christopher felt his chest tighten. There were things in those records he didn't want examined too closely. Small things. A personal trip to Miami charged to the business account. Lydia's consulting fees for work she'd never actually done. Nothing illegal exactly, but nothing that would look good in front of a judge. "How much is this going to cost me?" he asked. "Legal fees? Probably another $50,000 just to get through the preliminary hearings. But Chris, that's not your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is that Evans is right. Sophia did contribute significantly to building MillerTech. If this goes to trial, a judge could award her up to half of everything. Half. $9 million. Christopher felt sick. "There has to be another way," he said. "There is. You negotiate. You offer her a fair settlement, and I mean actually fair, and you keep this out of court. Because if this becomes public, your reputation takes a hit. Clients don't like working with people who screw over their pregnant wives." After Todd hung up, Christopher sat in silence. His office, with its expensive furniture and modern art, suddenly felt like a cage. Lydia arrived at 6, letting herself in with the key he'd given her. She wore a white pantsuit that probably cost more than Sophia's entire maternity wardrobe, and her expression was stormy. "We need to talk," she said, dropping her designer purse onto his desk. Not now, Lydia. Yes, now. I just got off the phone with the realtor. The penthouse deal is in jeopardy because your accounts are frozen. Do you know how embarrassing that is? They think we don't have the money. Christopher looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something crack inside him. 3 months ago, Lydia had seemed like an escape. Young, exciting, uncomplicated. Now she just seemed expensive. The accounts will be unfrozen once the legal situation is sorted, he said tiredly. When will that be? Because I already picked out furniture. I already told my friends we're moving to Tribeca. Your friends, Christopher repeated. Is that all you care about? Impressing your friends? Lydia's eyes narrowed. Don't put this on me. You're the one who said you were leaving her. You said the divorce would be quick and clean. You said we'd start our life together without complications. She's 8 months pregnant with my child. How is that ever going to be uncomplicated? That's not my problem. That's yours. You're the one who got her pregnant when you were already unhappy in your marriage. The words hung in the air between them. Ugly and true. Christopher had been unhappy, but he'd also been a coward, starting an affair instead of ending his marriage honestly. And now everyone was paying the price. I need to think, he said. Can you just go home? Lydia grabbed her purse, her face flushed with anger. You know what, Christopher? Maybe Sophia was right to fight back, because you clearly don't value anything unless someone makes you pay for it. She left, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, and Christopher was alone again. He stayed in the office until nearly midnight, going through financial records trying to figure out how to protect himself. But the numbers didn't lie. Sophia had contributed more than he'd wanted to admit. Her salary had kept them afloat during the lean years. Her credit had secured the loans. Her connections had brought in clients, and he'd repaid her by bringing his mistress to their divorce proceedings. His phone rang, an unknown number. He answered. Mr. Miller, this is Janet Reeves from Northbridge Financial. I'm calling because we've received some concerning information about Miller Tech's ownership structure and wanted to discuss the status of our contracts. Christopher's stomach dropped. What kind of information? Information suggesting that your company's ownership may be in dispute. We need clear assurance that the person we're contracting with has the authority to sign agreements. I'm sure you understand our position. He understood perfectly. Richard Evans was making noise and Christopher's clients were getting nervous. Mrs. Reeves, I assure you there's no issue. This is just a private legal matter related to my divorce. It won't affect our business relationship. Nevertheless, our legal team would like documentation confirming your sole ownership of Miller Tech before we proceed with the contract renewal next month. Can you provide that? Christopher couldn't. Not with a freeze on his assets and a pending motion for equitable distribution. I'll have my attorney send over the relevant documents, he said, trying to sound confident. We'll need them by the end of the week. Otherwise, we may need to pause our relationship until this is resolved. After she hung up, Christopher put his head in his hands. Northbridge Financial represented 20% of Miller Tech's annual revenue. Losing them would be catastrophic. He tried calling Sophia again. Still blocked. He called Elena instead, Sophia's sister. She answered on the third ring, her voice cold. What do you want, Christopher? I need to talk to Sophia, please. You had plenty of time to talk to her before you humiliated her in front of your mistress. Now she's done talking. Elena, this is getting out of hand. I'm trying to do the right thing, but her lawyer is making it impossible. The right thing? Elena's laugh was bitter. The right thing would have been not cheating on your pregnant wife. The right thing would have been not trying to steal money that she helped earn. You made your choices, Christopher. Now you get to live with them. She hung up. Christopher left the office at 1 a.m, taking an Uber back to the temporary apartment he was renting in Hell's Kitchen. It was a far cry from the Tribeca penthouse he'd imagined, but it was all he could afford with his accounts frozen. Lydia had texted him 4 times, each message more irritated than the last. He ignored them all. Instead, he found himself looking at old photos on his phone. Sophia on their wedding day, laughing at something his best man had said. Sophia at Christmas 2 years ago, wearing the ridiculous reindeer sweater his mother had given her. Sophia just last summer, her hand on her barely showing belly, smiling with a joy he hadn't seen in her face for months. When had he stopped seeing her? When had she become invisible to him? He didn't have an answer. He only knew that somewhere along the way, he'd convinced himself he deserved more, deserved better. Deserved someone like Lydia who didn't ask difficult questions or remind him of his responsibilities. But looking at those photos now, alone in this sterile apartment, Christopher realized what he'd actually done. He hadn't traded up. He'd thrown away the only person who'd ever truly believed in him, and now that person was fighting back, with a lawyer who knew exactly how to hit where it hurt most. Christopher's phone buzzed one more time. An email from Todd Brennan with the subject line, "Settlement Options." He opened it, reading through the proposed terms. Everything was there, laid out in cold legal language. What Christopher would have to pay, what he would have to give up, what his life would look like after this was over. It was brutal, it was fair, and it was entirely his own fault. Outside his window, the city lights glittered like stars. Somewhere out there, in a house in Queens, Sophia was probably sleeping, her hand on her pregnant belly, planning for a future that didn't include him. Christopher closed his laptop and sat in the darkness, finally understanding that some things, once broken, can never be fixed. 2 weeks after the legal motion was filed, Sophia woke at 3 a.m. to a sharp, cramping pain low in her abdomen. She lay still for a moment, hand on her belly, wondering if it was just another false alarm. The baby had been active all week, and her doctor had warned that Braxton Hicks contractions could feel intense this close to the due date. Then another pain came, stronger this time, radiating from her lower back around to her front. This was real. Sophia reached for her phone on the nightstand, her hands shaking slightly. She pulled up Elena's contact and pressed call. Her sister answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "Soph, what's wrong?" "I think it's time," Sophia said, breathing through another contraction. "Can you come get me? I'm on my way. Don't move. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Sophia hung up and slowly got out of bed. Her hospital bag had been packed for 2 weeks, sitting by the bedroom door like a patient sentry. She'd triple-checked its contents. Clothes for the baby, clothes for herself, toiletries, chargers, a list of important phone numbers. Christopher's number had been on that list. She'd crossed it out 3 days ago. Another contraction hit, and Sophia gripped the doorframe, counting slowly. The pain peaked and then receded like a wave, 5 minutes apart. Her OB had said to come to the hospital when contractions were 5 minutes apart, and lasting about a minute each. She made her way carefully down the stairs, turning on lights as she went. The house felt too big and too empty. In another version of her life, Christopher would be here, frantic and excited, grabbing the hospital bag, helping her to the car, holding her hand. But this was her life now, and she was doing this alone. Elena arrived in 18 minutes, bursting through the front door with wild hair and mismatched shoes. Okay, I'm here. Are you okay? Should we call an ambulance? Oh God, you're having the baby. Despite the pain, Sophia smiled. I'm okay. It's early labor. We have time. They made it to Mount Sinai Hospital by 4:30. The emergency entrance was quiet at this hour. Just a handful of staff and one other woman being wheeled in with a broken ankle. A nurse Sophia recognized from her years working here, Carmela Rodriguez, came out to meet them with a wheelchair. "Sophia, I heard you were expecting. Come on, let's get you upstairs." The labor and delivery ward was calm, dimly lit for the nighttime hours. They set Sophia up in a private room with a window facing east, where she'd be able to see the sunrise if things progressed slowly enough. Elena sat beside her, holding her hand through each contraction. By 6 o'clock, Sophia was 4 centimeters dilated. The contractions were coming every 3 minutes now, harder, stealing her breath. The anesthesiologist came and went, leaving her with an epidural that took the edge off the pain but left her present enough to feel everything that was happening. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, Sophia's obstetrician, arrived at 7. She was a tall woman with kind eyes and steady hands, someone Sophia had trusted immediately when they'd first met. "How are we doing, Sophia?" she asked, checking the monitors. "I'm okay," Sophia said, though her voice was tight. "Scared, but okay." Dr. Okonkwo squeezed her shoulder. "You're doing beautifully. Baby looks great. Heart rate is perfect. We're going to meet her very soon." "Her," Sophia repeated softly. Throughout the pregnancy, she'd tried not to get too attached to the idea of a daughter, afraid that somehow it would hurt more if things went wrong. But now, with labor progressing and the baby so close, she let herself feel the joy of it. A daughter. Her daughter. Elena stepped out to make phone calls. Their mother in Florida, a few close friends. When she came back, her expression was careful. "Christopher's been calling my phone," she said quietly. 6 times in the last hour. I think someone told him you're in labor." Sophia's chest tightened. She'd known this moment would come, had thought about it during sleepless nights. Christopher was the father. He had a right to know his daughter was being born. but the thought of seeing him now in this vulnerable moment made her feel sick. "What do you want me to do?" Elena asked. "Nothing," Sophia said. "Not yet. Let me get through this first." Another contraction rolled through her, and she gripped the bed rail, breathing through it. When it passed, she felt tears on her cheeks, though she wasn't sure if they were from pain or emotion or exhaustion. At 9:30, her water broke. Dr. Okonkwo checked her progress and nodded with satisfaction. 8 centimeters, we're getting close, another hour, maybe 2. But it wasn't 2 hours. By 10:15, Sophia was fully dilated, and the urge to push was overwhelming. Dr. Okonkwo positioned herself at the foot of the bed, and 2 nurses flanked Sophia on either side. Elena held her hand, whispering encouragement. "Okay, Sophia," Dr. Okonkwo said. "On the next contraction, I want you to push. Take a deep breath, hold it, and push down like you're trying to have a bowel movement. Can you do that?" Sophia nodded, too focused to be embarrassed by the clinical description. The contraction built, and she pushed with everything she had. "Good. That's perfect. Rest now. Get ready for the next one." The pushing went on for 40 minutes. It was the hardest physical work Sophia had ever done, harder than any double shift at the hospital, harder than anything she'd imagined. Sweat soaked her hair and hospital gown. Elena kept putting ice chips in her mouth, kept telling her how strong she was, kept being the anchor Sophia needed. And then at 10:58 on a Tuesday morning in late November, with pale winter sunlight streaming through the hospital window, Sophia's daughter was born. The baby's cry filled the room, strong and indignant, and Sophia started sobbing immediately. Dr. Okonkwo placed the tiny, squirming infant on Sophia's chest, and the world narrowed to just the 2 of them. "Hello?" Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. "Hello, sweet girl, I'm your mama." The baby had dark hair, still wet and matted, and her eyes were squeezed shut against the bright lights of the delivery room. Her fingers were impossibly small, curled into tiny fists. She weighed 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She was perfect. "What's her name?" one of the nurses asked gently. Sophia had thought about this for months. She'd made lists, crossed out options, changed her mind a dozen times. But looking at her daughter now, she knew. "Iris," she said. "Her name is Iris Sophia Miller." Elena was crying too, taking photos on her phone, capturing this moment that would change everything. The nurses took Iris for just a few minutes to clean her up, measure her, do all the necessary checks. Then they brought her back, wrapped in a pink and white striped blanket with a tiny knit hat on her head. Sophia held her daughter and felt something settle deep in her chest, a sense of purpose, a fierce protective love that made everything else seem small by comparison. "She's beautiful, Soph," Elena whispered. "She looks just like you." They moved Sophia to a recovery room an hour later. The adrenaline of labor was wearing off, leaving her exhausted but unable to sleep. Iris lay in the bassinet beside her bed, making small snuffling sounds. Sophia kept reaching out to touch her, to make sure she was real. Elena had gone down to the cafeteria to get food when there was a soft knock on the door. Sophia looked up, expecting a nurse. Instead, Christopher stood in the doorway. He looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, his shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He held a small bouquet of flowers, gripping them like a lifeline. "Sophia," he said, his voice rough. "Can I come in?" Every instinct told her to say no, to call security, to protect herself and Iris from any more pain. But she was too tired to fight, and some part of her, the part that had loved him once, couldn't deny him this. 5 minutes, she said quietly. Christopher entered slowly, his eyes moving from Sophia to the bassinet. When he saw Iris, his entire face crumbled. "Oh my God," he whispered. "She's here. She's really here." He approached the bassinet like it might disappear if he moved too quickly. Iris was sleeping, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Christopher reached out, then stopped, looking at Sophia for permission. She nodded. He touched Iris's hand with one finger, and the baby's fingers reflexively curled around it. Christopher made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "She's so small," he said. "So perfect." "Her name is Iris," Sophia said. "Iris." Christopher tested the name, still staring at his daughter. "That's beautiful." They stayed like that for a long moment, the 3 of them in the quiet hospital room. Then Christopher turned to Sophia and she saw tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he said. "For everything. For all of it. You shouldn't have had to do this alone." Sophia felt her throat tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "But I did do it alone, and I survived. We both did." I know I don't deserve to be here, Christopher continued. I know I destroyed everything, but please, Sophia, please let me be a father to her. I'll do whatever you need. I'll sign whatever papers you want. Just don't keep me from her. Sophia looked at Iris, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the complicated world she'd been born into. She thought about all the things she wanted for her daughter. Love, stability, a father who showed up. We'll figure it out, Sophia said finally. Through lawyers, through mediation, whatever it takes. But Christopher, you don't get to just walk back into my life. You broke us. And that doesn't heal because a baby was born. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand, thank you for letting me see her. Elena returned then, her expression hardening when she saw Christopher. Time's up, she said flatly. Christopher looked at Iris one more time, then at Sophia. I'll be better, he said. I swear I'll be better for her. After he left, Sophia let herself cry, for the marriage that had died, for the family that would never be whole, for all the dreams that had shattered. But when Iris stirred and began to fuss, Sophia wiped her eyes and picked up her daughter, holding her close. It's just us, she whispered against Iris's soft hair. And that's going to be enough. I promise you, that's going to be more than enough. Outside the window, the city moved on, indifferent to small human dramas. But in that hospital room, something new had begun. Not an ending, but a beginning. And Sophia Miller, holding her daughter for the first time, felt strong enough to face whatever came next. 3 weeks after Iris was born, Sophia learned what exhaustion truly meant. The December cold had settled over New York like a heavy blanket, and the house in Queens felt drafty no matter how high she turned the heat. Iris woke every 2 hours to feed, and Sophia moved through her days in a fog of interrupted sleep and perpetual worry. Was the baby eating enough? Was she sleeping too much? Not enough? Every cry sent Sophia's heart racing. Every quiet moment made her check to make sure Iris was still breathing. Elena had stayed for the first week, helping with everything from diaper changes to grocery shopping. But she had her own job and her own life, and eventually she'd had to go back to her apartment in Brooklyn. Now Sophia was alone with Iris, figuring out motherhood one sleepless night at a time. The divorce proceedings had been put on temporary hold, a small mercy while Sophia recovered from childbirth. But Richard had warned her that January would bring renewed negotiations, and she needed to be ready. Christopher had been calling and texting constantly, asking about Iris, asking to visit, asking for photos. Sophia had established a boundary, supervised visits only, twice a week, at Elena's apartment. Christopher had agreed without argument, which surprised her. But then again, he didn't have much choice. His lawyer had made it clear that pushing too hard right now would look bad when they went before a judge. The first visit had been awkward. Christopher had arrived with an enormous stuffed elephant that was bigger than Iris herself, along with outfits in sizes she wouldn't fit into for months. He'd held his daughter carefully, like she might break, and when Iris had cried, he'd immediately handed her back to Sophia. I don't know what she needs, he'd admitted, looking helpless. None of us do at first, Sophia had said, though it gave her no pleasure to see him struggle. You learn. By the third visit, Christopher was slightly better. He could hold Iris without looking terrified. He'd learned to support her head properly. He even managed to change a diaper, though he needed Elena's help. But Lydia was always hovering at the edges. She didn't come to the visits, Sophia had made that absolutely clear, but her presence was felt. Christopher would get texts he'd glance at nervously. Once, Sophia heard him on the phone in Elena's kitchen. I told you, I need to be here for her. This is my daughter. No, you can't come with me. That's not negotiable. The strain was showing on him. He'd lost weight, and the confident swagger he'd carried into that first meeting at the lawyer's office had been replaced by something that looked like regret. Sophia tried not to care. She had bigger concerns. Money, for one. Her savings were dwindling fast. Christopher was supposed to be paying temporary support, but the frozen accounts meant everything was delayed. Richard had filed another motion, but courts moved slowly, especially during the holidays. Sophia had applied for temporary assistance through the state, something that would have humiliated her 6 months ago, but now felt like survival. She'd also reached out to her old supervisor at Mount Sinai about returning to work part-time once Iris was a bit older. The thought of leaving her daughter made her chest ache, but bills didn't pay themselves. On a Tuesday afternoon in mid-December, Sophia sat in Richard's office once again, Iris sleeping in her carrier at her feet. The baby was bundled in a thick pink snowsuit, her face barely visible beneath the hood. The forensic accounting is complete, Richard said, sliding a thick document across his desk. And it's even better than I expected. Sophia tried to focus on the numbers, but exhaustion made them swim on the page. Just tell me what it means. It means Christopher has been undervaluing MillerTech's worth. The company is actually valued at $22 million, not 18. And with your contributions documented, the loans, the capital, the client connections, the unpaid labor, I'm confident we can secure 45%. Sophia did the math in her head. That's almost $10 million. $9.9 million to be exact, plus child support calculated at Christopher's actual income level, which is substantially higher than what he initially reported. We're talking about $4,000 a month in support payments, backdated to when you filed. The numbers felt unreal. Sophia had grown up in a working-class family in New Jersey. Her father had been a bus driver, her mother a school secretary. $10 million was money she couldn't conceptualize. What does Christopher say about this? She asked. Richard's expression darkened. He's fighting it. His lawyer claims the company valuation is inflated and that your contributions were minimal. They've offered a counter-proposal, $5 million as a one-time payment, $3,000 a month in child support, and you sign an NDA agreeing not to discuss the divorce publicly. An NDA? Sophia felt anger flare through her exhaustion. He wants to pay me to stay quiet about what he did? That's exactly what he wants. He's worried about his reputation, about how this looks to clients and investors. The business with Lydia, the hidden assets, it's all making him look bad. Sophia thought about the humiliation she'd endured in that first meeting. Christopher walking in with his mistress like Sophia didn't matter, like their 7 years of marriage meant nothing. What do you think I should do? She asked. Richard leaned back in his chair. Legally, I think we can get more if we go to trial. But trials are expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. You have a newborn. You're exhausted. Sometimes the smart choice is taking a good settlement and moving on with your life. Is $5 million a good settlement? It's better than $3,000 a month and a house with a mortgage. But it's not everything you're entitled to. Sophia looked down at Iris, who was starting to stir. In a few minutes, she'd be hungry again. And Sophia would feed her, change her, rock her, do all the things that made up their new life together. I want what I'm owed, Sophia said quietly. Not because I'm greedy, but because I earned it. And because Iris deserves security, so no, tell them no. Richard smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. That evening, back home, Sophia's phone rang. Christopher. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Sophia, please don't do this, he said immediately. $10 million could ruin me. The company can't afford that kind of payout right now. Then maybe you shouldn't have spent the last 3 months hiding assets and lying about the company's value, Sophia said. I made mistakes, I know that. But this isn't just about us anymore. This is about Iris. If you bankrupt me, I can't pay child support, I can't provide for her. You should have thought about that before you brought your mistress to our divorce proceedings. There was silence on the other end. Then, I know what I did was unforgivable. I know I hurt you in ways I can never fix, but I'm asking you for Iris's sake to be reasonable. Sophia felt something inside her harden. I am being reasonable. I'm asking for what's legally mine, what I helped build, what you tried to steal from me. It's not about the money for you, is it? Christopher's voice was bitter. This is about punishing me. No, Sophia said. This is about justice. There's a difference. She hung up before he could respond. Iris was crying now, her small face scrunched up and red. Sophia picked her up, settling into the rocking chair in the nursery. As Iris latched onto Nurse, Sophia felt the familiar tug and release, her body doing what it was designed to do. Through the window, she could see Christmas lights on the neighbor's house, blinking red and green in the darkness. It would be Iris's first Christmas. Sophia had bought a small tree and a few decorations. Nothing elaborate, but enough to make the holiday feel real. Her phone buzzed with a text. Elena, Mom wants to know if you're coming to Florida for Christmas. She can pay for the tickets. Sophia stared at the message. The thought of traveling with a month-old baby was overwhelming, but the thought of spending Christmas alone in this empty house was worse. She typed back, maybe. Let me think about it. Another text came, this time from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, but curiosity made her open it. This is Lydia. We need to talk. Sophia's first instinct was to block the number immediately, but something stopped her. She stared at those 5 words, feeling anger and curiosity war inside her. Against her better judgment, she responded, About what? The reply came quickly. About Christopher. About the divorce. about what's really going on. He's not telling you everything. Sophia's heart raced. What game was Lydia playing? I don't want to hear from you, don't contact me again. She blocked the number before Lydia could respond, but the damage was done. The words echoed in her mind. He's not telling you everything. What else could there possibly be? Iris had fallen asleep, milk-drunk and peaceful. Sophia carried her to the crib, laying her down carefully, covering her with a soft blanket. Then she stood there in the dim nursery, her hand on her daughter's back, feeling the rise and fall of her breathing. It's going to be okay, Sophia whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to Iris or herself. We're going to be okay. Outside, the December wind rattled the windows. Christmas was coming, and with it, a new year. A year that would bring legal battles and difficult decisions, and the slow, painful process of building a new life from the ruins of her old one. But standing there in the soft glow of the nightlight, watching her daughter sleep, Sophia felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the naive hope of her early marriage, when she'd believed love could conquer anything, but a harder, more resilient hope. The hope that comes from surviving the worst and discovering you're stronger than you knew. Christopher had betrayed her. Lydia had helped destroy her marriage. The divorce was going to be brutal and expensive and emotionally devastating. But Sophia had Iris, and she had herself, and somehow that was going to have to be enough. Her phone buzzed again. Another blocked number, another message from Lydia that she'd never see. Sophia turned off her phone and went to bed, leaving the unknown message unread, choosing sleep over drama, choosing peace over whatever poison Lydia was trying to spread. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight Sophia Miller slept, her daughter safe in the next room, and for this one moment that was all that mattered. Christmas came and went in a blur. Sophia had decided against Florida, choosing instead to spend the holiday quietly with Elena and Iris in the small Queen's house. They'd cooked a modest dinner, exchanged simple gifts, and watched Iris sleep through her first Christmas in a red velvet dress that was 2 sizes too big. Christopher had asked to see Iris on Christmas Day. Sophia had said no. Some boundaries she'd learned were necessary for survival. By early January, winter had settled into New York with a vengeance. Snow piled on the sidewalks, turning gray and slushy. Iris was 6 weeks old now, starting to show hints of a personality. She liked being held facing outward so she could see everything, hated having her diaper changed, and made a specific grunt when she was about to spit up. Sophia had developed a routine. Wake, feed, change, try to nap when Iris napped, repeat. The exhaustion had become a constant companion, but she was adjusting to it. Her body was healing from childbirth. Her mind was still working on healing from everything else. Richard had called a meeting for the second week of January. When Sophia arrived at his office, Iris strapped to her chest in a baby carrier, she found him looking grimmer than usual. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. Sophia's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Christopher's company is in trouble. Real trouble." Richard pulled out financial statements. Northbridge Financial dropped their contract renewal. That was 20% of Miller Tech's revenue. 2 other clients have also pulled out, citing concerns about company stability. Sophia shifted Iris's weight. "What does that mean for the settlement?" "It means the company valuation is dropping. 3 weeks ago we were arguing over $22 million. Now we're looking at maybe $15 million and falling. If this continues, there might not be much to divide." "He's doing this on purpose," Sophia said, anger flaring. "He's tanking his own company so he doesn't have to pay me." Richard shook his head. "I don't think so. I think this is genuine fallout from the divorce becoming public knowledge. When you freeze assets and file forensic audits, people notice. Clients get nervous. And in Christopher's industry, reputation is everything." Sophia felt a complex mixture of emotions, satisfaction that Christopher was facing consequences, but also fear about what this meant for Iris's future. If the company failed completely, there would be no child support, no settlement, nothing. "What do we do?" she asked. "We have 2 options. 1, we push forward with the lawsuit, risk everything, and possibly end up with nothing if the company goes under. 2, we accept a reduced settlement now while there's still something to claim." "How reduced?" Richard's expression was sympathetic. $6 million, $3,000 a month in child support, the house, fully paid off, and his agreement to cover Iris's health insurance and educational expenses through college. $6 million instead of 10. It was still more money than Sophia had ever imagined having, but it felt like losing. "I need to think about it," she said. That afternoon, Sophia sat in her living room, Iris asleep in the bassinet beside her, and tried to make sense of everything. $6 million would give Iris security, would let Sophia breathe, would mean she didn't have to go back to work until she was ready. But it also meant Christopher got away with hiding assets, with bringing Lydia to their divorce proceedings, with all of it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Normally she wouldn't answer, but something made her pick up. Sophia? The voice was female, sharp with barely contained anger. It's Lydia, don't hang up. Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. I told you not to contact me. Yeah, well, things change. You need to hear what I have to say about your precious Christopher. The venom in Lydia's voice was unmistakable. This wasn't the confident woman from the lawyer's office. This was someone scorned. I'm not interested in your drama, Sophia said. Not even if it puts more money in your pocket? Not even if it proves Christopher's been lying to everyone? Lydia's laugh was bitter. Trust me, you want to hear this. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on Amsterdam Avenue, 2 o'clock. Why would I ever? Because Christopher has been hiding money. A lot of money. And I know exactly where it is. There was a pause. He promised me the world, Sophia. Penthouse in Tribeca. Trips to Europe. A life most people only dream about. And now? Now he's telling me we need to slow down because his finances are complicated. He used me, and now he's throwing me away like trash. Sophia felt a cold satisfaction. So the fairy tale was crumbling. That's your problem, not mine. Wrong. It's both our problems. Because that money he's hiding, it should be yours. And I'm going to make sure you get it, just to watch him suffer. Lydia's voice hardened. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Show up or don't. But you'll regret it if you don't. The line went dead. Sophia sat staring at her phone. This wasn't redemption. This was revenge. Lydia didn't care about making things right. She cared about hurting Christopher the way he'd hurt her. The next day, Sophia bundled Iris against the January cold and took the subway to the Upper West Side. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd clearing out, and she found a table in the back corner where she could see the door. Lydia arrived exactly on time, and the change in her was stark. She wore jeans that looked slept in and a coat that had seen better days. Her hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp around her face. The confidence that had radiated from her in November had been replaced by something raw and angry. She dropped into the seat across from Sophia without greeting. He's been lying to you, Lydia said flatly. About everything. Get to the point, Sophia said. I don't have time for this. Lydia pulled out her phone, scrolling through screenshots. Christopher has an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, opened it 2 years ago. There's $970,000 in it. Money he's been funneling out of the business for years. She turned the phone so Sophia could see the bank statements. Real account numbers, real transactions, real money. How do you have access to this? Sophia asked carefully. Because he's an idiot who uses the same password for everything and doesn't log out of his email on my laptop. Lydia's smile was cold. He thought I was just some pretty distraction who didn't pay attention to details. Turns out I pay very close attention. Why are you showing me this? Because 3 days ago, Christopher told me he thinks we rushed into things, and he needs space to focus on the divorce. Translation, he's done with me. The penthouse, canceled. The promises, all lies. He got what he wanted from me. Someone to stroke his ego while he left you, and now he's moving on. Lydia's hands clenched into fists. So yeah, I'm showing you this because I want him to hurt the way I'm hurting. I want him to lose everything. You're not doing this out of guilt, Sophia said. You don't care what you did to me. You're right. I don't. Lydia met her eyes without flinching. I saw what I wanted and I took it. That's how the world works. But Christopher promised me something and he lied. And I don't let people screw me over without consequences. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket and slid it across the table. Everything's on here. Account statements, transaction histories, emails where he talks about moving money offshore. Give it to your lawyer. Take him for everything he's worth. I'll even testify if you need me to. Sophia stared at the USB drive. What do you get out of this? Satisfaction. Lydia stood up, and watching Christopher realize that treating people like they're disposable has consequences. He thought he was so smart playing both of us. Turns out he's just another lying bastard who got caught. The people at your work know about the affair, Sophia said quietly. I heard some of Christopher's colleagues have been talking. How's that going for you? Lydia's jaw tightened. That's none of your business. You wanted to be part of this mess. Now you get to live in it. Sophia picked up the USB drive. Don't contact me again, ever. I'm taking this information because it helps my daughter's future, not because I have any sympathy for you. Good, because I'm not looking for sympathy. Lydia grabbed her coat. I just want Christopher to get what he deserves. And so do you, whether you admit it or not. After Lydia left, Sophia sat with the USB drive and her sleeping baby. She felt no satisfaction in Lydia's downfall, no pleasure in seeing the affair collapse. She just felt tired, but she also felt strategic. Whatever Lydia's motivations, the information was real, and it was exactly what Sophia needed. That evening, she emailed Richard. I have new information. Can you meet tomorrow? His response came quickly. 10 a.m., my office. What kind of information? The kind that changes everything. Richard examined the documents on his computer screen, his expression growing darker with each page. Sophia sat across from him, Iris asleep in her carrier, waiting. This is substantial, Richard said finally. If these statements are legitimate, and they appear to be, Christopher has been committing fraud. Hiding assets during divorce proceedings is illegal. A judge could impose penalties beyond just the asset division. What does it mean for the settlement? Sophia asked. It means we're back to our original demand, possibly more. Christopher is going to have to explain why he hid nearly $1 million, and that explanation is going to make him look very, very bad. Richard looked at her. Where did you get this? Does it matter? It might. If this came from an illegal source, it came from someone who had legitimate access to the information, someone who's angry enough at Christopher to expose him. Sophia met his gaze. That's all you need to know. Richard studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll have my team verify these documents. If they check out, and I believe they will, we're filing an emergency motion by the end of the week. When Sophia got home that afternoon, there were 17 missed calls from Christopher. She didn't call back. Instead, she sat in Iris's nursery, rocking her daughter while snow fell outside the window. Somewhere in the city, Christopher was probably panicking, realizing his secret had been exposed, scrambling to figure out what to do. And somewhere else, Lydia was probably seething, dealing with the consequences of sleeping with a married man, whispers at work, friends distancing themselves, the reality that being the other woman came with a permanent stain. But here, in this quiet room, Sophia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not the destructive kind that Christopher had wielded, using his success to diminish her, but the kind that came from knowing the truth, from having proof, from refusing to be cheated. Your father made a lot of mistakes, Sophia whispered to Iris, but the biggest one was thinking I'd just accept whatever he decided to give me. He forgot that I'm the one who helped him build everything he has, and you don't get to erase someone like that. Her phone buzzed. A text from Christopher. We need to talk, please. Sophia turned off her phone and went to make dinner, leaving Christopher to wait in the silence he'd created, finally understanding what it felt like to have no control, no power, and no easy way out. Justice, Sophia was learning, was a slow process, but it was coming. The emergency motion hit Christopher's legal team like a bomb on a Thursday morning in late January. By noon, Todd Brennan was on the phone with Richard, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Sophia sat in Richard's office, listening to the speakerphone conversation while Iris nursed quietly in her arms. The baby was 7 weeks old now, her dark eyes more alert, tracking movement and light. This is insane, Todd was saying. You can't just produce evidence of an offshore account out of nowhere and expect— I can and I did, Richard interrupted calmly. The account exists. The statements are legitimate. Your client has been hiding assets, which constitutes fraud. A judge is going to take this very seriously. Where did you even get this information? That's not relevant. What's relevant is that it's accurate. Christopher opened that account in January 2023, has been making regular transfers, and failed to disclose it in any of his financial statements during mediation. There was muffled conversation on the other end, as if Todd had covered the phone to speak with someone else. When he came back, his tone had changed. My client is willing to negotiate. I'm sure he is, Richard said dryly. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to reconvene with a mediator present. Christopher is going to disclose every asset he has, and I mean every single one. And then we're going to discuss a settlement that actually reflects Mrs. Miller's contributions and entitlements. And if we refuse, then we go before a judge, and I present evidence of intentional fraud. Christopher could face penalties beyond the asset division. He could face criminal charges for hiding assets during divorce proceedings. His reputation, what's left of it, will be completely destroyed. His remaining clients will drop him, and Mrs. Miller will still get what she's owed. Richard leaned back in his chair. So I'd suggest you convince your client to negotiate in good faith this time. After the call ended, Sophia felt her hands shaking slightly. Is this really happening? It's happening, Richard said. Christopher is cornered. The offshore account proves intent to defraud. Combined with the other hidden assets we found, he's looking at serious legal consequences if this goes to trial. How much can we get? Richard pulled out a calculator running numbers. The offshore account adds almost $1 million to the total assets. The company, despite losing clients, is still valued at around $16 million. With the house, investments, and other assets, we're looking at roughly $19 million in total marital assets. He looked up at her. I think we can get you $9 million. Maybe more. Sophia tried to process the number. $9 million. It would change Iris's entire life. It would give them security, opportunity, freedom. What about child support? She asked. Based on Christopher's actual income, not the fabricated numbers he initially provided. I'm pushing for $5,000 a month. Plus, he covers all medical expenses, contributes to college savings, and maintains a life insurance policy with Iris as beneficiary. It was more than Sophia had dared hope for, but it also felt like acknowledgement, legal, financial acknowledgement, of everything she'd contributed, everything she'd sacrificed, everything Christopher had tried to steal from her. The mediation was scheduled for the following Wednesday at a neutral location, a conference room in a building near City Hall. Sophia arrived 15 minutes early with Richard, her stomach in knots. She'd left Iris with Elena, unable to bring herself to have the baby present for this. Christopher was already there when they walked in, sitting next to Todd Brennan. He looked terrible. He'd lost more weight. His suit hung loose on his frame, and there was a defeated slump to his shoulders that Sophia had never seen before. He looked up when she entered, and something passed across his face. Regret? Shame? Maybe both. She looked away. The mediator was a woman named Judith Walsh in her 50s with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the documents that both sides had submitted, her expression neutral. Mr. Miller, she said finally, I'm going to be direct. The evidence of hidden assets is damning. You have two choices. Negotiate a fair settlement today, or face a judge who will not look kindly on financial fraud. Christopher's jaw worked. I'd like to speak. Go ahead. He looked at Sophia, and she forced herself to meet his eyes. I know I've made terrible mistakes. I know I hurt you in ways that can't be fixed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking that we find a way forward that doesn't destroy everything. You should have thought about that before you brought your mistress to our divorce proceedings, Sophia said quietly. You should have thought about that before you hid money in offshore accounts. You should have thought about that before you tried to cheat me out of what I helped build. I know. Do you? Sophia's voice hardened. Because from where I'm sitting, you only care now because you got caught. You only care because your company is failing and your girlfriend left you and your reputation is in shambles. You don't actually care about what you did to me. Christopher flinched. That's not true. Sophia, Let's focus on the settlement. Judith interrupted firmly. Mr. Miller, your financial disclosure shows total assets of approximately $19 million. Mrs. Miller's legal team is requesting 47% of that total, which comes to approximately $9 million. Todd started to object, but Christopher raised a hand to stop him. What else? $5,000 monthly in child support, backdated to the date of filing. Full coverage of medical expenses for the child. Contribution of $1,000 monthly to a college savings account. Maintenance of a life insurance policy with the child as beneficiary, and the house in Queens, with the mortgage paid in full. The silence in the room was heavy. That's everything, Christopher said finally. That's more than everything. It would leave me with $10 million, and I have legal fees, business debts. You have $10 million more than many people have in a lifetime, Richard said. And you have it because Sophia helped you build it. She worked double shifts so you could start your company. She signed loans when banks wouldn't trust you. She brought you clients. She sacrificed her career to support yours, and you repaid her by cheating on her while she was pregnant with your child. Christopher's face had gone pale. My client is being more than reasonable, Richard continued. She could push for 50%. She could push for criminal charges over the hidden assets. She's offering you a way out that lets you keep your freedom and half of everything. I suggest you take it. Judith looked at Christopher. Do you need time to confer with your attorney? Christopher and Todd spoke in low voices for several minutes. Sophia watched, her heart pounding. This was it. The moment that would determine her future and Iris's future. Finally, Christopher turned back to the table. I'll agree to the $9 million and the terms for child support and expenses, but I want joint custody of Iris. No, Sophia said immediately. She's my daughter. She's a 7-week-old baby who doesn't know you. You've seen her 4 times since she was born, 4 times in 7 weeks. Sophia's voice shook with anger. You want joint custody? You want to take my infant daughter away from me for days at a time? Absolutely not. I'm trying to be part of her life, Christopher said desperately. You should have thought about that before you blew up her family, Sophia shot back. You don't get to destroy everything and then demand equal access to the one good thing that came from our marriage. Judith raised a hand. Let's discuss a custody arrangement that serves the child's best interests. Mr. Miller, at this age, the child needs stability and consistency with the primary caregiver, which is Mrs. Miller. However, you are entitled to visitation. After another hour of tense negotiation, they reached an agreement. Christopher would have supervised visitation twice weekly for 2 hours each visit, with the possibility of overnight visits once Iris turned 2 years old, pending review. It wasn't joint custody, but it was more access than Sophia wanted to give him. But she also knew that Iris deserved a father, even if that father had failed as a husband. The final settlement was drawn up and signed by 4:30 that afternoon. $9 million, $5,000 a month in child support. The house, medical expenses covered, college fund established, life insurance policy. When Christopher signed his name on the final page, his hand shook slightly. When Sophia signed, her hand was steady. They left through different exits. Sophia walked out with Richard into the gray January afternoon, feeling like she'd just run a marathon. How do you feel? Richard asked. I don't know, Sophia admitted. Relieved? Angry? Sad? She looked up at the cloudy sky. I won, but it doesn't feel like winning. That's because divorce isn't about winning, Richard said gently. It's about surviving and moving forward. You got justice, Sophia. That's more than many people get. That evening, Sophia held Iris in the nursery. The signed settlement agreement on the dresser. $9 million. More money than she'd ever imagined. Enough to secure Iris's future, to buy a new house, to never worry about bills again. But it couldn't buy back the 7 years she'd given to Christopher. It couldn't erase the betrayal. It couldn't make Iris's family whole. Your daddy and I couldn't make it work, Sophia whispered to her daughter. But I promise you, sweet girl, I'm going to give you the best life I can. You're going to grow up knowing you're loved. You're going to grow up safe and secure, and you're never going to doubt your worth. Her phone buzzed. A text from Elena. How did it go? Sophia typed back. It's done. We settled. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. Another text, this time from an unknown number. I heard about the settlement. Congratulations on taking him for everything. Hope it was worth it. L. Lydia. Still bitter, still angry, still making everything about herself. Sophia blocked the number without responding. She was done with Lydia, done with Christopher, done with all of it. She had $9 million, a healthy daughter, and a future to build. The past was finally, officially, over. Now she just had to figure out how to move forward. 3 months after the settlement was finalized, Sophia stood in the kitchen of her new home in Astoria, watching the spring rain streak down the windows. Iris was 4 months old now, lying on a playmat in the living room, cooing at the colorful toys dangling above her. The house was modest, a 2-bedroom with a small backyard, nothing extravagant, but it was hers, fully paid for, no mortgage, no landlord, no memories of Christopher in every corner. She'd sold the Queen's house in March, unable to bear living in the space where her marriage had died. The $9 million was sitting in carefully managed accounts. Richard had connected her with a financial advisor, a calm woman named Vanessa, who'd helped Sophia understand concepts like trusts and investment portfolios. Most of the money was locked away for Iris's future: education, emergency funds, long-term security. Sophia had kept enough to buy this house, to live comfortably, to not worry about every dollar. But money, she was learning, didn't fix grief. She'd started therapy in February, sitting in a sun-filled office in Manhattan while Elena watched Iris. Dr. Morrison was a woman in her 40s who specialized in divorce recovery and postpartum adjustment. Their first session, Sophia had cried for 45 straight minutes, finally letting out everything she'd been holding in. "You survived something traumatic," Dr. Morrison had said gently. "A betrayal, a public humiliation, a high-conflict divorce, all while pregnant and then caring for a newborn. That's not something you just bounce back from." The sessions helped. Slowly, painfully, Sophia was learning to separate her identity from what Christopher had done to her. She was learning that his betrayal said nothing about her worth. She was learning to be angry without being consumed by it. Christopher's visits with Iris continued twice a week, supervised by Elena at her apartment. He was trying, Sophia had to admit. He showed up on time, brought appropriate toys, was gentle with Iris. But there was a sadness in him now, a heaviness that hadn't been there before. "He asked about you," Elena had mentioned after one visit. "Asked how you're doing, if you're okay. What did you tell him?" "I told him that's none of his business anymore." Sophia appreciated her sister's protectiveness, but part of her wondered if Christopher was finally understanding what he'd lost. Not just the money or the company, though Miller Tech was struggling, reduced to half its former size with Christopher working constantly to keep it afloat, but the family he'd destroyed, the daughter he barely knew, the woman who'd believed in him when no one else did. On a Tuesday afternoon in late April, Sophia was at the pediatrician's office for Iris's 4-month checkup when she ran into someone from her past. Carmela Rodriguez, the nurse who'd been there the night Iris was born, was in the waiting room with her own daughter. "Sophia, how are you? How's that beautiful baby?" They chatted for a few minutes, catching up. Carmela mentioned that Mount Sinai was hiring, that they'd love to have Sophia back if she was interested in returning to nursing. "I don't know," Sophia said honestly. "I haven't thought about going back to work yet." "Well, if you do, let me know. We miss you." After the appointment, Sophia sat in her car in the parking lot, Iris sleeping in the car seat behind her, and thought about Carmela's words. Did she want to go back to nursing? She'd loved it once, before Christopher's company had taken off, before she'd stepped back to support his dreams. She had the financial security now to choose. She could stay home with Iris. She could go back to work part-time. She could even go back to school, finish the degree she'd abandoned years ago. The possibilities were overwhelming and liberating at the same time. That evening, she called her mother in Florida. They'd been talking more frequently since the divorce, rebuilding a relationship that had frayed during Sophia's marriage. Her mother had never liked Christopher, had always sensed something off about him, but Sophia had been too in love to listen. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey. When you and Dad divorced, how did you know when you were ready to move on?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. Sophia's parents had divorced when she was 12, a messy split that had taken years to resolve. "I don't know if there was a specific moment," her mother said finally. "It was more like, one day I realized I'd gone a whole week without being angry, then a whole month without thinking about him first thing in the morning. It happened gradually, like seasons changing. You don't notice spring arriving until suddenly there are flowers everywhere." "I'm still so angry," Sophia admitted. "Some days I wake up and I'm furious all over again. At Christopher, at Lydia, at the whole situation. That's normal. You're allowed to be angry, but don't let it become who you are. Don't let what he did define the rest of your life." After they hung up, Sophia looked at photos on her phone. She had hundreds of Iris, sleeping, smiling, crying, discovering her hands. But scrolling back further, she found photos from her marriage. Christopher and her at a friend's wedding, both laughing. A vacation to Cape Cod. Christmas mornings. Ordinary moments from a life that had seemed happy. Had it been happy? Or had she just been too busy surviving to notice it was falling apart? She didn't have answers. She only knew that those people in the photos, that younger version of herself and the man she'd thought Christopher was, didn't exist anymore. On the first weekend of May, Elena convinced Sophia to go out for coffee while she watched Iris. "Just an hour," Elena insisted. "Get out of the house. Remember what adult conversation feels like." Sophia found herself at a cafe in Astoria, sitting alone with a latte and a book she'd been trying to read for weeks. At the next table, 2 women were deep in conversation about their toddlers. Across the room, a young couple was on what was clearly a first date, all nervous laughter and shy glances. Normal life. Regular people having regular problems. Sophia had felt so isolated in her drama, the betrayal, the legal battles, the public humiliation. But sitting here, she realized life had continued around her. The world hadn't stopped because her marriage had ended. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy with what you did." Christopher lost his biggest client today. That's on you. Lydia. Still finding ways to reach her despite being blocked multiple times. Sophia stared at the message for a long moment. 6 months ago, it would have sent her spiraling into guilt and doubt. Now she simply deleted it and added the number to her block list. What happened to Christopher's company wasn't her fault. She hadn't forced him to cheat. She hadn't forced him to hide assets. She hadn't forced him to bring Lydia to their divorce proceedings. Those were his choices, and he was living with the consequences, just like Lydia was living with hers. From what Sophia had heard through mutual acquaintances, Lydia had been quietly let go from her job in March. The official reason was restructuring, but everyone knew the real reason was the scandal. No company wanted to keep an employee who'd publicly participated in such a messy affair. Lydia had apparently moved back to Pennsylvania, to some small town where her family lived. Sophia felt no satisfaction in this, just a tired sort of acknowledgement that actions had consequences, even if those consequences took time to arrive. When Sophia got home, Elena was playing with Iris on the floor, making silly faces that had the baby giggling, a new skill she'd developed just last week. "How was your hour of freedom?" Elena asked. "Strange. Good. I don't know." Sophia sat down next to them, letting Iris grab her finger. "I got another text from Lydia. She blamed me for Christopher losing a client." Elena rolled her eyes. "Of course she did, because nothing is ever her fault. I just feel tired of it all. Tired of the anger, tired of the drama, tired of looking backward. So look forward," Elena said simply. "You have a beautiful daughter. You have financial security. You have a whole life ahead of you. What do you want it to look like?" It was the same question Sophia had been asking herself for weeks. What did she want? She wanted Iris to grow up happy and loved. She wanted to find purpose again, whether that was returning to nursing or something entirely new. She wanted to build a life that was hers, not defined by Christopher or the divorce or any of it. She wanted to be whole again. "I think I want to go back to school," Sophia said slowly, the idea forming as she spoke. "Maybe get my nurse practitioner degree. It's something I always wanted to do but never had time for." Elena smiled. "Then do it. You have childcare money. You have time. You have options. Make it happen." That night, after Iris was asleep, Sophia sat at her laptop and pulled up information about nurse practitioner programs in New York. The applications were daunting, the commitment significant, but for the first time in months, she felt excitement about something. Not excitement about revenge or justice or watching Christopher suffer, just pure, simple excitement about building something for herself. She filled out a preliminary application to a program at Columbia that offered flexible scheduling for working parents. The program would take 3 years part-time. By the time she finished, Iris would be in preschool, and Sophia would have a career she'd built entirely on her own terms. As she clicked submit on the application, Sophia felt something shift inside her. A small shift, barely noticeable, but real. She was moving forward. Christopher would continue to be part of her life because of Iris. Lydia would probably continue trying to reach out with bitter messages. The divorce would leave scars that would take years to fully heal. But Sophia Miller was no longer defined by what had been done to her. She was defined by what she was building for herself and her daughter. And for the first time since that horrible day in the lawyer's office, that felt like enough. Summer arrived in New York with oppressive heat and humidity that made everything feel heavy. Iris was 7 months old, sitting up on her own now, babbling constant streams of nonsense syllables that Sophia swore were almost words. The baby had Christopher's nose but Sophia's eyes and smile, a reminder that some good had come from the wreckage. Sophia had been accepted into Columbia's nurse practitioner program, set to begin in September. She'd found a daycare near her house in Astoria, a bright space with patient teachers and a long wait list she'd only gotten off because of a last-minute cancellation. Everything was falling into place, slowly but surely. Christopher's visits with Iris had become routine. Twice a week he'd come to Elena's apartment and spend 2 hours with his daughter. He'd learned to change diapers efficiently, could make bottles without Elena's help, and had even mastered the art of getting Iris to nap in his arms. He brought age-appropriate toys, read board books in silly voices, and documented every moment with photos he never posted publicly. Elena reported that he seemed lonely. He'd lost more weight. His company had stabilized but would never return to its former size. He lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn now, nothing like the Tribeca penthouse he'd once imagined. "He asks about you every time," Elena mentioned one evening in late June. Not in a creepy way. Just how you're doing. If you're happy. What do you tell him? Sophia asked. That you're doing well. That you're moving forward. That it's none of his business. Elena paused. But Soph, he really does seem different. Like he finally gets it. That's good for him, Sophia said without emotion. But it doesn't change anything. And it didn't. Christopher's growth, if that's what it was, had come too late and cost too much. Sophia was glad he was becoming a better father to Iris, but she felt nothing for him anymore. Not love, not hate, just a distant sort of indifference. One Saturday in July, Sophia took Iris to a Mommy and Me music class at the library. 12 women sat in a circle with their babies singing songs and shaking tambourines, while the babies drooled and grabbed at everything. Sophia had been nervous about going, her first real venture into the world of normal mothers, but the other women were welcoming and kind. After class, a woman named Jamie approached her. She had a son Iris's age and a friendly smile. Want to grab coffee? There's a place down the block that's stroller-friendly. Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Sure, that sounds nice. They spent an hour talking about sleep schedules and teething and the exhaustion of new motherhood. Jamie didn't ask about Iris's father, didn't pry into Sophia's personal life. It was refreshingly normal, a conversation that had nothing to do with divorce or betrayal or legal battles. As they were leaving, Jamie said, "There's a group of us who meet at the park on Wednesday mornings. You should come. The babies play. We drink too much coffee and complain about being tired. It's very therapeutic." Sophia found herself smiling. I'd like that. Wednesday became a regular park date. The group of mothers expanded. Jamie, plus a woman named Keisha with twin girls, and another named Priya with a quiet baby boy. They talked about everything and nothing, shared parenting advice, and complained about their partners in ways that made Sophia realize how many different ways a family could be imperfect. She didn't talk about Christopher or the divorce unless asked directly. When Priya eventually inquired about Iris's father, Sophia kept it simple. We're divorced. He has visitation twice a week. It's complicated, but we're managing. No one pushed for details. In the world of these mothers, divorce was just another variation of normal. It didn't define Sophia. It was just one fact among many. In early August, Sophia received an email that made her heart race. Columbia's program director wanted to schedule a meeting before the semester started. The email was professional but vague, giving no hint whether this was routine or if there was a problem. She met with Dr. Helena Marsh in a small office on campus, Iris in her stroller sleeping peacefully. Ms. Miller, Dr. Marsh said warmly, I wanted to meet you because your application stood out. You have an impressive work history at Mount Sinai, but there's a 7-year gap. Can you tell me about that? Sophia had known this question would come. She'd rehearsed her answer, but actually saying it out loud was harder than she'd expected. I stepped away from nursing to support my husband's business startup. I handled administrative work, client relations, and eventually took on the role of primary caregiver when I became pregnant. We've since divorced, and I'm ready to return to nursing and advance my career. Dr. Marsh nodded thoughtfully. That kind of career interruption is more common than you might think, especially among women. But I want to be honest with you, this program is rigorous. Clinical rotations, coursework, exams, and you'll be doing it as a single parent. Are you confident you can handle that? Sophia looked down at Iris, then back at Dr. Marsh. I'm confident. I have childcare arranged. I have family support, and I've already survived the hardest year of my life. I think I can handle graduate school. Dr. Marsh smiled. I believe you. Welcome to the program, Ms. Miller. I look forward to working with you. Walking out of that office, Sophia felt a surge of pride. She'd earned this, not because of the settlement money, not because of the divorce drama, but because she was qualified and capable and ready to build something for herself. That evening she called her mother to share the news. Her mother cried happy tears over the phone. I'm so proud of you, honey. You've come so far. It doesn't always feel that way, Sophia admitted. Some days I still wake up angry. Some days I still can't believe everything that happened. That's normal. Healing isn't linear. But look at you. You have a beautiful daughter, a new home. You're going back to school. You're building a whole new life. After they hung up, Sophia stood in Iris's nursery, watching her daughter sleep, 7 months old. In another 7 months, she'd be walking. In a few years, she'd be starting school. Time was moving forward whether Sophia was ready or not. Her phone buzzed. A text from Christopher. Can we talk? Not about Iris. About something else, please. Sophia stared at the message. They hadn't had a direct conversation since the mediation in January. All communication went through lawyers or Elena. The idea of talking to him made her stomach twist. But something about the message seemed different. Not demanding, just asking. She typed back, "What about?" His response came quickly. "I owe you an apology. A real one. Not through lawyers or mediators. Just you and me. You don't have to forgive me, I just need you to hear it." Sophia sat down on the edge of her bed, her heart racing. Did she want to hear Christopher apologize? Would it change anything? Would it help or hurt? "I'll think about it," she finally typed back. She didn't respond further that night. Instead, she texted Dr. Morrison, her therapist, asking if they could schedule an extra session this week. When they met 2 days later, Sophia explained the situation. "Do you think you're ready to hear what he has to say?" Dr. Morrison asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants closure. Part of me thinks I already have closure and this would just open old wounds. What would closure look like for you?" Sophia thought about it. "I think closure would be hearing him acknowledge what he did without making excuses, without trying to minimize it or make it about his feelings. Just accountability. And if he can't give you that, then I walk away knowing I tried and the failure is his, not mine." Dr. Morrison nodded. "It sounds like you know what you need. The question is whether you're ready to risk not getting it." That night, Sophia texted Christopher. "Okay, we can talk, but not at your place or mine, somewhere neutral. And I'm bringing Elena." "Thank you. You name the place." They met at a quiet diner in Queens on a Sunday morning. Elena sat at a nearby booth, giving them space but staying close enough to intervene if needed. Iris was with Elena's girlfriend for the morning, her first time being babysat by someone outside the family. Sophia had stressed about it all week. Christopher was already there when Sophia arrived, sitting in a booth by the window. He stood when he saw her, awkward and uncertain. "Thank you for coming," he said as she slid into the seat across from him. "You have 30 minutes, Sophia said. "Say what you need to say." Christopher took a deep breath. "I've been in therapy since February, and one of the things my therapist has me working on is accountability. Not just saying I'm sorry, but understanding what I'm sorry for and why I did what I did." Sophia said nothing, waiting. "I betrayed you," Christopher continued, his voice steady but pained. "I cheated on you while you were pregnant with our daughter. I brought my mistress to our divorce proceedings to humiliate you. I tried to steal money that you helped earn. And I did all of it because I was selfish and cowardly and convinced myself I deserved better than the life we'd built together." He paused, looking down at his hands. "I told myself lies. That you'd changed. That we'd grown apart. That the affair was just something that happened. But the truth is, I chose it. Every step of the way, I chose to betray you. And I'm sorry. Not because I lost money or because my business failed or because I'm lonely, but because you didn't deserve what I did to you. You deserved honesty and respect, and I gave you neither." Sophia felt tears prickling her eyes, but she kept her voice steady. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Iris is going to grow up and ask questions about why her parents aren't together. And when she does, I want to be able to tell her that I owned my mistakes, that I apologized to you, not to make myself feel better, but because it was the right thing to do." He met her eyes. "You don't have to forgive me, I'm not asking for that, I just needed you to hear it." Sophia wiped at her eyes. "Do you understand what you took from me? Not just the marriage, but the trust I had in my own judgment. The belief that love could be enough. The idea that if I worked hard and sacrificed, it would matter. I do, and I'm sorry. I loved you," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "I loved you so much, and you made me feel like that love was worthless. It wasn't worthless. I was just too stupid and selfish to see what I had." Christopher's own eyes were wet now. "You're an incredible person, Sophia. An incredible mother. And someday Iris is going to be so proud to be your daughter." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sophia stood up. "Thank you for apologizing," she said. "I needed to hear it. But Christopher, this doesn't change anything between us. We're Iris's parents. We'll co-parent. But we're never going to be friends. We're never going to be anything more than two people who share a child." "I understand," Christopher said. "And that's okay." Sophia walked out of the diner, Elena following. In the car, Elena asked, "How do you feel?" "Lighter," Sophia said. "Not happy, not sad, just lighter." That night, after Iris was asleep, Sophia sat in her backyard in Astoria, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city lights. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, pregnant, betrayed, broken. and she thought about the woman she was now. Stronger, clearer, moving forward. Christopher's apology didn't erase what he'd done, but it did give her something she'd needed. Acknowledgement that her pain had been real and valid. She was ready now, ready to start school, ready to co-parent without anger consuming her, ready to build a life that was entirely her own. The past would always be part of her story, but it wasn't going to be the ending. The first day of classes at Columbia arrived with crisp September air and the kind of nervous energy that made Sophia's hands shake as she dropped Iris off at daycare. Her daughter was 9 months old now, crawling everywhere and pulling herself up on furniture. She'd said her first word last week, "Mama," and Sophia had cried with joy. "You're going to do great," the daycare director, Mrs. Chen, said kindly, as Sophia hesitated at the door. "And Iris is going to have a wonderful day. We'll call if there are any problems." Sophia kissed Iris's forehead one more time, then forced herself to leave before she changed her mind. The Columbia campus was bustling with students, a mixture of fresh-faced undergrads and serious graduate students carrying messenger bags and coffee cups. Sophia felt simultaneously too old and too young as she found her way to the nursing building. The program cohort was small, just 15 students, most of them in their late 20s and early 30s. During introductions, Sophia learned that several were also parents, balancing careers and children and education. It made her feel less alone. Professor Marsh taught their first class, a foundations course on advanced practice nursing. "This program will challenge you," she said, looking around the room. "You'll question why you're doing this. You'll want to quit. But if you push through, you'll emerge as clinicians capable of making real differences in people's lives." Sophia took notes furiously, her hand cramping after just an hour. She'd forgotten what it was like to be a student, to have her brain stretched in new directions. It was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. At lunch, she sat in the cafeteria with 2 other students from her cohort, Maya, who worked in pediatrics, and David, who was transitioning from emergency nursing to primary care. "So what made you decide to go back to school?" Maya asked. Sophia had prepared for this question. "I took time off to raise my daughter. Now I'm ready to advance my career." It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth, and that was okay. Not everyone needed to know about Christopher or the divorce or the settlement. That was her past, not her present. The week settled into a rhythm. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were class days. Sophia would drop Iris at daycare at 7:30, attend classes until 3, then pick up her daughter and spend the evening playing and reading and doing the constant work of motherhood. Tuesday and Thursday were for studying, reading dense textbooks while Iris napped, reviewing notes while she played on her mat. Christopher's visits continued, now moved to a park near Sophia's house, so Iris could enjoy the playground. Elena no longer supervised. That requirement had been dropped once it became clear Christopher was consistent and appropriate with their daughter. He'd bring snacks and books, push Iris on the baby swings, and document every milestone with photos. He and Sophia exchanged brief, polite words during drop-off and pickup. The weather, Iris's latest achievements. Nothing personal. It was civil and distant, and exactly what Sophia needed it to be. In late October, Sophia's study group met at her house for the first time. Maya and David came over with textbooks and laptops, and they spent 3 hours reviewing pharmacology while Iris entertained herself in her playpen. "Your daughter is adorable," Maya said during a break, "and this house is lovely. You've really built a nice life for yourself." Sophia looked around her living room, the comfortable furniture she'd chosen herself, the photos of Iris on the walls, the plants thriving in the sunny windows. "Yeah," she said softly, "I guess I have." The first semester finals came in December, brutal exams that tested everything they'd learned. Sophia studied until her eyes burned, balancing flashcards with feeding schedules, reviewing case studies while rocking Iris to sleep. When grades were posted, she'd earned straight A's. She sat in her car in the parking lot and cried with relief and pride. Christmas came again, a year after that first quiet holiday with just Elena and Iris. This time, Sophia's mother flew up from Florida, and they spent a week together in the Astoria house. Iris was 11 months old, standing with support and babbling constantly. Christopher came by on Christmas Eve to exchange gifts with Iris. He brought a huge stuffed reindeer and a savings bond. Sophia gave him a framed photo of Iris from her recent portrait session. "She looks just like you," Christopher said, studying the photo. "She has your nose," Sophia replied. There was a moment of awkward silence. Then Christopher said, "I heard you're doing really well in your program. Top of your class. How did you hear that?" "Elena mentioned it. I'm proud of you, Sophia, for what you're building." "Thank you," Sophia said, and was surprised to find she meant it. After he left, Sophia's mother said, "He seems different. Humbler." "He is, but it's too late for us. That ship has sailed." Her mother squeezed her hand. "I know, but it's good that he's being a decent father. That matters for Iris." New Year's came with a quiet celebration at home. Sophia put Iris to bed at 7:30, then poured herself a glass of wine and sat in her backyard despite the cold. At midnight, she watched fireworks bloom over the city skyline and thought about the year that had just ended. 12 months ago, she'd been struggling through early motherhood alone, still raw from the divorce, still figuring out who she was without Christopher. Now she was a graduate student with a 4.0 GPA, a homeowner, a mother raising a healthy, happy daughter, a woman with friends and purpose and a future that excited her. She'd survived. More than that, she'd rebuilt. In late January, Sophia ran into someone unexpected at the grocery store. She was in the produce section, Iris sitting in the cart grabbing at everything when she heard her name. "Sophia Miller?" She turned to see Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, the obstetrician who'd delivered Iris. "Dr. Okonkwo, hi!" They chatted for a few minutes, catching up. Dr. Okonkwo admired how much Iris had grown. She was nearly a year old now, pulling up on the cart and trying to stand. "I heard through the grapevine that you're in Columbia's NP program," Dr. Okonkwo said. "How are you liking it?" "It's challenging, but I love it. I'm actually specializing in women's health." "That's wonderful. We need more practitioners who understand what patients go through." Dr. Okonkwo paused. "Sophia, I remember the day Iris was born. I remember how strong you were, and I'm not surprised you're excelling now. You've always had that strength." After they parted ways, Sophia felt tears in her eyes. It was strange how small moments of recognition could matter so much. Dr. Okonkwo had seen her at one of her lowest points, and now she was seeing her thriving. The second semester started with clinical rotations. Sophia was assigned to a women's health clinic in the Bronx, working under a nurse practitioner named Simone, who'd been practicing for 15 years. "You have good instincts," Simone told her after the first week. "You listen to patients. You don't rush them. That's rare." Sophia had learned through her own difficult experiences how much it mattered to feel heard. She brought that awareness quietly to her work, taking time with each patient, asking thoughtful questions, sitting instead of standing during consultations. One afternoon, she saw a patient who was 7 months pregnant and visibly distressed. The woman was crying in the exam room, struggling to explain her situation. Sophia could see the exhaustion in her face, the weight of carrying both a baby and whatever burden was breaking her heart. Sophia pulled up a chair and sat at eye level with her. "Take your time," she said gently. "I'm not in a rush. Whatever you need to tell me, I'm listening." The woman took a shaky breath and began to talk about her relationship falling apart, about feeling alone, about being terrified of doing this by herself. Sophia listened without interrupting, asking clarifying questions only when needed, validating the woman's feelings without offering empty reassurances. By the end of the appointment, the woman had stopped crying. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I didn't think anyone would understand." "You're not alone," Sophia said simply, "and we're going to make sure you and your baby have the support you need." After the appointment, Simone pulled Sophia aside. "That was textbook patient-centered care. You made her feel safe enough to be honest. That's the foundation of everything we do." Sophia nodded, thinking privately about how much she understood what that patient was feeling, but she kept those thoughts to herself. Her past had taught her empathy, but it wasn't something she needed to share with patients. Her job was to listen and support, not to make it about her own story. Iris's first birthday came in late November. Sophia threw a small party in her backyard with Elena, her mother, the friends from her park group, and a few classmates from Columbia. Christopher came for an hour, bringing an enormous present and taking photos, then leaving before the cake cutting. Iris smashed her face into a small cake, getting frosting everywhere, and everyone laughed and took pictures. It was joyful and messy and perfect. That night, after everyone had gone home and Iris was asleep, Sophia looked at the photos on her phone. Her daughter's first year, documented in hundreds of images. Sophia saw her own face in those photos too, changing gradually from exhausted and grief-stricken to something clearer and brighter. She wasn't the same person who'd sat in that lawyer's office 13 months ago. 8 months pregnant and humiliated. That woman had been broken. This woman was whole, not undamaged but healed in the places that mattered. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jamie, her friend from the park group. "Thanks for a lovely party. Iris is lucky to have you as her mom." Sophia smiled and typed back, "Thank you for being part of our village." The truth was, Sophia had built more than just a new life. She'd built a community. People who showed up, who cared, who supported her without needing to know all the painful details of her past. As winter settled in again, Sophia focused on finals and clinical hours and the constant juggling act of single parenthood and graduate school. It was hard. Some days were overwhelming, but she never once regretted her choices. One evening in December, as she was putting Iris to bed, her daughter looked up at her and said, "Mama love." Sophia's heart melted. "That's right, baby. Mama loves you so much." "Dada," Iris added, pointing toward the door. "Yes, Dada loves you too. You have two parents who love you very much even if we're not together." It was the truth Sophia would always teach Iris, that love didn't have to look a certain way, that families came in all configurations, that what mattered was showing up and doing the work. Christopher had done terrible things, but he was learning to be a good father, and Sophia was learning to separate those two truths, to acknowledge his failures as a husband while accepting his efforts as a parent. As she walked out of Iris's room, Sophia caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. She looked tired. Graduate school and motherhood would do that. But she also looked content, at peace. The settlement money sat in accounts, carefully managed and mostly untouched. Iris would have college paid for. They had security. But that wasn't what made Sophia feel successful. What made her feel successful was this. She'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and used it as fuel to build something better. She'd refused to be defined by betrayal. She'd demanded justice and gotten it, and then she'd moved forward. The divorce would always be part of her story, but it was just one chapter, not the whole book. And the chapters she was writing now, those were entirely hers. 3 years later, Sophia, Astoria, New York. The April sun warmed Sophia's face as she pushed Iris on the swings at the neighborhood park. Her daughter was nearly 4 years old now, all long limbs and constant chatter, telling elaborate stories about her imaginary friend and the dinosaurs who lived in her closet. "Higher, Mama, higher!" Sophia laughed and gave the swing another push. In the distance, she could see her house, the same one in Astoria, though she'd renovated the kitchen last year and added a small office where she did her work. She'd graduated from Columbia's nurse practitioner program 18 months ago, finishing in the top 5% of her class. Now she worked at a women's health clinic in Queens 3 days a week, seeing patients who reminded her why she'd chosen this path. The other 2 days, she did consulting work from home, developing patient education materials for a healthcare nonprofit. It was a good life, a full life, nothing extraordinary by external standards, but rich in the ways that mattered. "Sophia," Jamie waved from across the playground, her son running toward the slide. "Coffee after this?" "Definitely. I need to hear about your sister's wedding drama." This was her village, the mothers from the park, her colleagues at the clinic, her classmates from Columbia who still met for monthly dinners. People who knew her as Sophia, the nurse practitioner, Sophia the single mom, Sophia who brought the best cookies to every potluck, not Sophia the divorced woman, not Sophia who'd been betrayed, just Sophia. Her phone buzzed. A text from Christopher. "Running 10 minutes late for pickup. Traffic on the bridge. No problem," she typed back. Christopher picked up Iris every other weekend now, taking her to his apartment in Brooklyn for overnight visits. He'd earned that privilege slowly, proving himself consistent and reliable over 3 years. He attended Iris's preschool events, paid child support on time, and called twice a week just to talk to his daughter. He was a decent father. Not perfect, but trying. And that was all Sophia had ever asked for. When Christopher arrived, Iris ran to him with a squeal. "Daddy, I learned a new song at school." "Let me hear it," he said, scooping her up. He looked older now, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But he also looked lighter somehow, less burdened. "How's the new contract going?" Sophia asked politely as she handed him Iris's overnight bag. "Good, steady. We're not breaking any records, but we're stable." Miller Tech had found its footing as a smaller, specialized firm. Christopher would never be a multimillionaire again, but he made a comfortable living. "That's good," Sophia said, and meant it. She didn't want him to fail anymore. She just wanted him to be stable enough to support their daughter. "You look happy," Christopher said suddenly. Sophia smiled. I am. Good. You deserve to be. He shifted Iris in his arms. I'll have her back Sunday at 5. After they left, Sophia sat on a park bench, watching other families play. She'd been on a few dates over the past year. Nothing serious, just testing the waters of what it felt like to be interested in someone again. It was strange and awkward, and sometimes nice. She wasn't in a rush. If love came again, it would come. If it didn't, she had a full life already. Her phone rang. Elena. Hey Soph, are we still on for dinner tonight? Absolutely. Want me to bring anything? Just yourself. And maybe that spinach dip you make. Sophia laughed. Deal. Christopher, Brooklyn, New York. Christopher sat in his apartment that evening after putting Iris to bed in the small room he'd decorated as hers. Princess posters on the walls, a bookshelf filled with picture books, a nightlight shaped like a moon. He'd read her 3 stories, sung the lullaby she insisted on, and stayed until her breathing deepened into sleep. These weekends with his daughter were the best part of his life now. His apartment was quiet. Modest furniture, nothing fancy. A far cry from the penthouse he'd once imagined with Lydia, or even the comfortable house he'd shared with Sophia. But it was clean and paid for, and it was enough. Miller Tech occupied a small office in Dumbo now, just him and 3 employees. They did solid work for mid-sized clients, nothing glamorous. He'd had to rebuild his reputation brick by brick, showing up, delivering quality, proving he was reliable despite the scandal that had followed his divorce. Some old clients would never come back. He'd run into Marcus Brennan from Northbridge Financial at a conference last year, and the man had looked right through him. The message was clear. Some bridges once burned, stayed burned. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. How's my granddaughter? Sleeping peacefully. She asked about visiting Florida again. Any time. We'd love to have you both. His parents had been disappointed in him, deeply, vocally disappointed, when they'd learned about the affair and how he'd handled the divorce. His father had barely spoken to him for 6 months. Their relationship had slowly mended, but it would never be quite the same. They were kind to him now, but there was a wariness there, a loss of respect that he'd never fully regain. Christopher poured himself a glass of water and sat by the window, looking out at the Brooklyn streets. Sometimes he thought about the choices he'd made, the life he'd destroyed. The affair with Lydia felt like it had happened to a different person, someone arrogant and stupid, and convinced he deserved more than what he had. He'd been in therapy for 3 years now. His therapist, Dr. Paulson, had helped him understand why he'd made those choices. Fear of aging, fear of commitment, fear of being ordinary. None of it excused what he'd done, but it helped him understand how to be better. He thought about Sophia sometimes, not with longing, but with a deep, permanent regret. She'd been the best thing in his life, and he'd thrown her away for something that had turned out to be nothing at all. He didn't deserve her forgiveness. He'd never asked for it again after that conversation in the diner. But he hoped that someday Iris would understand that her father had made terrible mistakes and spent the rest of his life trying to be better. Lydia, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Lydia's apartment was small, a 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor of a converted house on the outskirts of Harrisburg. The rent was cheap, which was good, because money was tight. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office, a huge step down from her previous job in New York, but it was all she could get with her tarnished reputation. The affair had followed her everywhere. When she'd moved back to Pennsylvania 3 years ago, she'd hoped for a fresh start. But small towns had long memories, and the internet was forever. A quick Google search of her name brought up articles about Christopher's divorce, mentions of the other woman, speculation and judgment from strangers who'd never met her. She'd applied to dozens of jobs in her field. Most never responded. A few had called her in for interviews, and she could see the moment they recognized her name, the way their expressions closed off. The dental office had hired her because they were desperate, and because Dr. Martinez didn't Google his employees. It paid enough to cover rent and groceries, but not much else. Her social life was non-existent. Her old friends from high school had distanced themselves when they'd learned about the affair. "That's not who we thought you were," one had said. Her family was civil, but cold. Her mother had cried when she'd first come home. How could you do something like that? Help destroy a marriage? Lydia had tried to explain that Christopher had said his marriage was already over, that she'd thought she was in love, that it had all seemed different at the time. But her explanations sounded hollow even to her own ears. She'd tried to date, but it never went anywhere. Men in Harrisburg were either unavailable or uninteresting. and the ones who were interested lost interest quickly when they learned about her past. "I don't date homewreckers," one had said bluntly after a third date. The label had stuck. Homewrecker. The other woman. The one who'd slept with a married man whose wife was pregnant. Lydia thought about New York sometimes. The excitement, the possibilities, the version of herself who'd felt powerful and desired. That woman felt like a stranger now. She'd tried to reach out to Christopher a few times over the years. The first time, he'd blocked her number. The second time, he'd responded, "Please don't contact me. That part of my life is over." The finality of it had stung. She'd also tried reaching out to Sophia once more 2 years ago with some half-formed idea of apologizing. But Sophia had blocked her immediately, and Lydia had gotten the message. She wasn't wanted in their lives. Not for closure, not for redemption, not for anything. On a Tuesday evening, Lydia sat in her apartment eating takeout and scrolling through social media. She saw photos of old colleagues from New York. Promotions, weddings, babies, successful careers. Lives moving forward while hers had stalled. She came across a photo that made her heart sink. A mutual acquaintance had posted a picture from a women's health conference. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was Sophia. She looked professional in scrubs and a white coat, laughing with colleagues, a name badge that read, Sophia Miller, NP. Sophia had rebuilt. She'd gone back to school, advanced her career, created a new life. And Lydia? She was stuck in a small Pennsylvania town, working a dead-end job, still carrying the stain of choices she'd made 3 years ago. She put down her phone and looked around her small apartment. This was her life now. No glamour, no excitement, no Christopher promising her the world. Just the daily reality of being the person everyone warned their daughters not to become. Some mistakes she was learning you paid for forever. Sophia, Astoria, New York. Sunday evening after Christopher dropped Iris off, Sophia gave her daughter a bath and helped her into pajamas covered in cartoon stars. "Daddy says we're going to the aquarium next weekend," Iris said excitedly. "That sounds fun, you love the fish. Can you come too, Mama?" Sophia smiled gently. "No, baby. That's special time with Daddy. But you can tell me all about it when you get home." "Okay." Iris yawned, already sleepy from a busy weekend. After Iris was asleep, Sophia made herself tea and sat in her backyard. The spring air was cool but pleasant, and she could hear neighbors talking over their fences, the city humming in the background. She thought about the woman she'd been 4 years ago. Broken, humiliated, terrified of the future. That woman would hardly recognize her life now, not because it was glamorous or extraordinary, but because it was peaceful. She had meaningful work that helped people. She had a daughter she adored. She had financial security and a home she loved. She had friends and family and a community that supported her. Christopher was becoming a better person, but that was his journey, not hers. She wished him well from a distance, hoped he continued to be a good father, but felt no attachment to his life beyond their co-parenting arrangement. And Lydia? Sophia rarely thought about her anymore. When she did, it was with a detached sort of acknowledgement. Lydia had made choices, terrible choices, and was living with the consequences. Sophia didn't celebrate her struggles, but she didn't feel sorry for her either. That was simply justice playing out naturally. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Morrison, her therapist. "Just checking in. How are you doing?" "Really good," Sophia typed back. "Actually, genuinely good. That's wonderful to hear. You've come so far." Sophia looked up at the stars, barely visible through the city lights, but there nonetheless. 4 years ago, she'd thought her life was over. She'd thought betrayal had broken something in her that could never be fixed. But she'd been wrong. She hadn't just survived, she'd grown. She'd learned that her worth wasn't dependent on someone else's ability to see it. She'd learned that justice sometimes came slowly, but surely. She'd learned that rebuilding was possible, even when everything seemed destroyed. Most importantly, she'd learned that she was enough, just as she was. Single mother, nurse practitioner, survivor, fighter, all of it. Enough. Iris's voice called from inside. "Mama, I need water." Sophia smiled and stood up, heading back inside to where her daughter needed her, where her real life was waiting. Not the life she'd planned, but a life she'd built with her own hands, one day at a time. And it was beautiful. The end final message: betrayal leaves scars that never fully disappear. Christopher's arrogance cost him everything that truly mattered. A loyal partner, a family, his reputation, and the respect of those who once admired him. Lydia learned that being the other woman isn't a romantic adventure. It's a permanent stain that follows you everywhere, closing doors and burning bridges for years to come. But Sophia, she discovered something more powerful than revenge: dignity. She didn't need Christopher to fail spectacularly to feel successful. She didn't need Lydia to suffer publicly to feel vindicated. She simply rebuilt her life, brick by brick, creating something solid and real, not for the cameras, not for validation, but for herself and her daughter. True victory isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's waking up in a home you own, doing work you love, raising a child who feels safe, and realizing that the person who tried to destroy you no longer has any power over your peace. Christopher and Lydia made their choices. Sophia made hers. And in the end, only one of them built something worth keeping. Reflective question for you. If you were in Sophia's position, betrayed, humiliated, and fighting for what you deserve, would you have had the strength to demand justice without letting anger consume you? Or would revenge have felt sweeter than peace? Sometimes the hardest battles aren't against those who hurt us, but against becoming bitter in the process of healing. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.